Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you made the most of that screen break as well as your coffee session. We now move into plenary session 1, building a low-carbon, resilient recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. Our moderator for this session is none other than Mr. Niloy Banerjee, UNDP resident representative from Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam. Our panelists will be speaking on topics related to building a low-carbon, resilient recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. Hello, Mr. Banerjee, welcome. Now, the panelists for this session are Yang Berbahagia, Dato Sri Engineer Dr. Zaini bin Ujang, Secretary General with the Ministry of Environment and Water, CASA. Our second panelist is Yang Berbahagia, Datin Sri Sunita Rajakumar, founder of Climate Governance Initiative, Malaysia. She's joined by Yang Berbahagia, Datuk Dr. Mary Wong Lai Lin, Deputy Secretary General of Policy with the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, KPKP. And our first plenary panel is rounded off by Yang Berbahagia, Tan Sri Dr. Jamila Mahmud, Special Advisor to the Prime Minister of Malaysia on Public Health. Mr. Banerjee, I now hand over our illustrious panel to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Tamina, and very, very warm welcome to the panelists. This is a panel I know quite well. I meet Dr. Zaini quite often. Dr. Mary, I know you well from our trip to Sarawak before all this craziness happened around us, and of course Tan Sri Jamila, old friend, UN colleague, and now of course playing a major role in this country. And finally, Datin Sunita, I know a lot about your initiative, but it's great to first meet you here. Excellencies, I will quickly read out a short bio introduction of each of you. As you know, we are discussing really whether this moment of crisis has given us a moment for pause, but also given us a moment to rethink whether we can do a green recovery, a greener recovery. We can go on to a different path of the pathway to development than we have been pursuing so far. As you all know, being much more refined experts in this area, the world is on a slightly unsustainable path to greenhouse gas emissions, 53 billion metric tons a year being put in the atmosphere. Most of it CO2, but also others like the gases that come out of the methane and the nitrous oxide that comes out of agricultural fertilizers. So overall, and we are not on target to the 1.5 degree Paris, the Paris agreement, that the commitment that we all made. So it's in that context we take stock whether this crisis has brought us to a place where we can now reimagine development a little bit and think how we can make it greener. And of course, the ultimate aim is not only a sustainable planet that's at peace with growth, development, incomes, etc., but also with the planet and the future generations to who we are obliged to leave behind a pretty healthy and reasonable ecosystem and atmosphere and forest cover and wildlife diversity, etc., etc. So that's the context in which we're coming together. Very, very happy to have you on board. I'll quickly read a very short summary of your bio, one by one. So I'll go with Dato Sri Dr. Zaini bin Ujang first. He is an environmental engineer by training, but he lives his day-to-day life more on the environmental side than on the engineer side. So he's an avid cyclist and who would frequently ditch his car to walk on his way to the office or elsewhere. But he has an illustrious career behind him. He was the chairman of a number of technical committees that promoted green technology, low carbon mobility, water sustainability, and river trails. He's also been an academic. He's been a professor on environmental sustainability at UTM, and a visiting professor at Imperial College London, and also at MIT. So he's been a vice chancellor of a university, and then he's been, of course, in government. He's been secretary general of a number of ministries: higher education, energy, green technology, and water. And at present, he is the Secretary General of the Ministry of Environment and Water. In his free time, he loves writing poems, hiking, and river trailing. So, as you would expect from a man in his position here. So he lives his job. He lives and breathes his job on a daily basis. Datin Sri Sunita Rajkumar is founder of the Climate Governance Initiative of Malaysia. She's an independent director, a professional independent director in the companies in the boards of many companies. I'll come to that in just a minute. But most of all, she's a strong advocate of the importance of governance in general, but also particularly in risk management. In keeping with that credo of her life, she founded the Climate Governance Malaysia Forum, which is the country chapter for the World Economic Forum's Climate Governance Initiative. And in her corporate role, she plays a number of important. She's custodian of a number of important roles. She's a fellow of the Institute of Corporate Directors of Malaysia. She is a big promoter of gender diversity on the boards of corporations, a big challenge around the world, colleagues, as you know, but certainly also a big challenge in Malaysia. She's a member of the Global Advisory Board of Nottingham University School of Business, the advisory panel on the UN Global Compact Malaysia Sustainability Center of Excellence, and work streamly for government policy at the CEO Action Network, an industry-led initiative to increase sustainability and climate resilience. She's a director. She's an independent director at a couple of Bursa-listed companies, the Dutch Lady Milk Industries and Berjaya Corporation. And she's also MCIS Insurance, which is a member of the Sanlam Group, and Zurich General Insurance. And she serves as a trustee of 5 charitable foundations. So again, a very, very, very rich and wide experience from whom we will get to hear today. Dr. Mary has been working in the Malaysian government for the last 31 years. She is currently, of course, Deputy Secretary General for Policy at KPKT, the Ministry of Housing and Local Government. But she's also been in 5 other ministries across the government. So she has a wide range of experience cutting across many sectors. She's currently also heading a special task force on solid waste management and the circular economy. So again, an exciting field, and we will be delighted to hear from Dato' Mary. And finally, my good friend Tan Sri Dr. Jamila, who's special advisor to the Prime Minister, as you all know, and playing a very, very critical role. Thank you, Tan Sri, for what you're doing for the country and for all of us, for even the expats that live as guests in your country. Thank you so much. Tan Sri Jamila is a medical professional. She's a health sector expert, consummate health sector expert, but who now is sitting in a very, very important position with a cross-cutting overview of how multiple sectors are impacted and what are the trade-offs between doing one thing and another, between making policy choices, between making day-to-day choices of what you allow and what you lock down. So she's at the heart of that conversation. So I will actually bring her in at the end, so we get the overview, the trade-offs, the cross-cutting, etc. But anyway, she's, as you know, currently special advisor to the Prime Minister of Malaysia on public health, and she started this position in April of last year, just as the lockdowns were kicking in and we were getting into the crisis. And of course, she sits on the very important Malaysia Economic Action Council, sort of the coordinating body of all economic and other policy in the country. I don't need to say more about Tan Sri Jamila, but she's been with IFRC. She's been the chief of the World Humanitarian Summit Secretariat in New York, a time when I had some opportunity to interact with her in New York. She was the chief of the Humanitarian Response Branch at our sister agency, the UN Population Fund, UNFPA, and of course she's the founder of Mercy Malaysia, as you all know. She also sits on many boards in NGOs, INGOs, and is a well-recognized, well-celebrated international scholar and thinker. She's won a number of national and international awards for her role, and she's a senior fellow of the Adrian Arsht Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center. Her real training, I mean, despite this wide range of expertise and eminence, her real training is in medicine. And at the beginning of the pandemic, she told us all in the UN that she is the first one who signed up to be a trained vaccinator. So again, very proud of you, Tan Sri. She's a doctor of medicine and and has a master's in obstetrics and gynecology from the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists in UK. She's also from the IMD. She has a management degree from the IMD Development Center in Switzerland. Without further ado, then I'll dive in. Dato' Sri Zaini, I'm going to ask you to give us a little overview of the low carbon city policies, and if you want to link that to COVID-19 and how we go forward, the lay of the land. And Datin, then I will ask Datin Sunita, I will ask you to obviously speak to the private sector interface in all this. Finally, Dato' Mary, I will ask you to speak a little bit to the issue of how cities and local governments come on board and what incentives and nudges we need to provide. And finally, Tan Sri Jamila, I want you to give us the overview of this trade-off across sectors that you're seeing in this very, very challenging times, but also that we are seeing from you a very, very calm, collected captain of the ship who's managing this in a way that makes us feel confident that we are moving in the right direction. So without further ado, Dato' Sri Zaini, may I ask you to speak a little bit about the Green Cities, lay of the land, the policies, how are we doing, where are we going, and what does COVID-19 say to us? Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Banerjee, for the introduction. About 20 minutes ago, Prime Minister launched the National Low Carbon Cities Master Plan. So I would like to share with all of the panels and those who are participating in this webinar on the Low Carbon Cities Master Plan. So everyone knows about the importance of global warming to be in perspective, especially post-COVID scenario. And we in Malaysia, in particular, my ministry, we are working very hard to keep track on our carbon footprint. Last night we had meeting until 11:30 together with other ministers, about 70 ministers, for ministerial consultation prior to COP26. So what we had discussed internally on the Malaysian commitment to ensure that we will be able to deliver 45% reduction by 2030. So as we know, this very important slide. And this week, the higher officials in Malaysia will decide on three things. What will be the future until 2030? The trajectory going to be for Malaysia. So I can safely saying that we are very focused now to get the blue line to be in place and then to be reported in our NDC, nationally determined contribution, to be submitted to UNFCCC by end of this month. So I hope that by 2030, we will be able not only to deliver 45%, but more than that. Okay, the idea of having this blueprint is in line with our understanding on environmental sustainability. I use this slide many times, Mr. Banerjee, because I think this is the easiest way to explain to people what is carbon and why carbon became very important, because it relates to global pollution loading. And our strategy has been only two: to reduce carbon emission and to increase carbon sink. In the context of cities in Malaysia, that we are trying to reduce carbon intensity is to have this in place. And we are doing a lot on subject related to green technology and green cover. Okay, what I think matters and what we need to do now, especially post-COVID-19, is to develop a new systemic way of living in cities by embracing low carbon lifestyle, by enhancing circular economy. And this will be able, this is my term, I'm so sorry, I have not come across this term except in my slide. Climate culture means that whatever we do, we have to bear in mind something related to climate is going to happen. And this is require a lot of investment, and this is our commitment altogether. So this is all indicated in our BOR3 NDC that we are going to finalize this week, and long-term low emission development strategy that we are going to make it ready by next year. Okay, why cities are important? Because 80% of GDP produced in cities, and people living in city consume 2/3 of the global energy supply and responsible for 70% of GHG emission. So in the future, by 2030, 2/3 of the world will be urban dwellers. Therefore, I think we have crafted two policies in the past. One, National Green Technology Policy 2009, and I was chairing Green Technology Master Plan 2017. So I would like to reiterate the importance of green technology as a driver to accelerate low carbon, not only in cities, but also in countries like Malaysia. This is very important statement that we have to understand fully in the context of UN habitats. The problem in our cities, we have a situation whereby world cities are responsible up to 70% of greenhouse gases while occupying just 2% of its land. So therefore, according to the Executive Director of UN Habitats, we have to plan our urban scenario better and greater citizen participation. We can make our hot cities cool again. Okay, and in 17 goals that we have in Paris Agreement of Sustainable Development, number 11 is related to sustainable cities and communities, to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Here you can see the targets and whatnot. So this is in line what we are doing. As far as Malaysia is concerned, the focus will be GHG reduction at city level to promote green growth using green technology. So say, for example, enhancing environmental sustainability through green growth and leverage on our rich biodiversity. We have in mind that 50% of our forest and tree cover is in perpetuity, is part of our commitment in Rio Summit. And that related to the quality of life. There are 4 drivers that we are trying to do in Malaysia. I think this will reduce more than 70% of our carbon emission in city in Malaysia. One is waste, zero waste to landfill, means that we are going to, Dr. Mary will talk about circular economy, extensive urban greenery, and energy efficiency and renewable energy, and low carbon mobility options. So this is not my photo, yeah? This is someone else's photo that's cycling there. What is the benefit of low carbon cities? We have to sell this idea. It's unfortunate to happen. Sometime when we talk to people at city level, they're asking us what benefit they can get. So I think it is very important for us to reiterate this. Our city will be cleaner, cooler, healthier, and more vibrant. So get more people to come to stay together with them. There are 4 elements in GHG reduction and 15 performance criteria with 41 sub-criteria. These are among the important major items that we have in the master plan. And on top of that, we make a lot of events. Say, for example, this is competition among cities, among towns in the country. We would like to have 200 low carbon zones with 1,000 low carbon partners in the near future. Okay, this will reduce our carbon just using this kind of framework by 45%. On top of that, we have Catalyst in Low Carbon Cities initiative that launched recently by the minister, I think in April, if I'm not mistaken. Cities can apply. There are allocations this year for them to start doing something related to low carbon cities. And this is the way forward that I think important for us to discuss here today, related to decentralized energy generation, solar township and buildings, reduction of municipal waste, energy and water consumption reduction, as well as government effort should be visible to motivate people. So this is, I think, very important. We keep on stating that at the moment, government is subscribing to 30% of green products as far as procurement under Ministry of Finance concerned. So we want to make it 50% in the near future. So we are working very hard to ensure that government's going to be the main user of green products, on top of encouraging walking and cycling by having transit-oriented development to take place. Thank you, Banerjee, Mr. Banerjee, for your time, for your introduction.
Thank you, Dato Sri. Very, very informative, and you exactly laid out the lay of the land as I had hoped you would. I will quickly move to Datin Sri Sunita. And Datin Sri, very obviously the thing to ask you is, you know, how can we bring the private sector in? How can we create win-win private-public partnerships, particularly post? I mean, COVID itself has shown us a massive. We've seen a phenomenal. I can't recall in my 21 years in UNDP a single incidence of where the vaccine was developed in academic circles, in laboratories, universities, and then handed over to private sector, the Pfizers and the AstraZenecas of the world. So academia, private partnership for the distribution, and governments came in, the public sector came in with the financing as well as the last mile delivery and logistics management. This is a phenomenal academia, private, public partnership. Again, in the midst of all this tragedy, finding these silver linings. So that actually, go for it. Tell us more. What can happen? How can we learn from this and make it and apply it to our green cities space, our green overall climate change and green recovery space? And and bottlenecks. What problems are we likely to face, and what are the incentives and good behavior nudge points that we need to put in? So over to you, Datin.
Thank you so much, Niloy. Such a pleasure to be here and with such esteemed other speakers as well. What is the role of the private sector? I'd like to start with why private sector should be interested in this. And as you said, when the pandemic started last year, it brought together an unprecedented collaboration. Governments, civil society, research, academia, etc. What you described earlier as a moment of crisis. And last year, we still were describing it as a new normal that we had to live in. But now I think we are starting to recognize the concept of never normal, that we're never going to get back to normal again. And if not for the pandemic, then very likely because of the climate emergency that we're facing. And this is part of the reason why there has been tremendous momentum over the last 12 to 18 months. Aside from the overwhelming majority of scientists and unprecedented 126 Nobel Prize winners, central bankers, there are now 95 central banks and 15 observers in their network, NGFS. Also, framework development, whether it's the IFRS Foundation, the International Organization of Securities Commission's recent consultations, they all recognize the need to have a uniform standard for reporting, meeting the demand of all of allocators of capital who want to make informed decisions. In addition, more recently, the International Energy Agency's Dr. Fateh Birol has been instrumental in issuing 2 months ago the world's first comprehensive energy roadmap, which shows that government actions can create millions of jobs and lift economic growth and keep a net zero goal in reach if they resolve to boost green energy and reduce fossil fuel usage. A few days ago, the G7 announced that they wanted to stop state funding for coal power plants. And 2 days ago, the G20 endorsed carbon pricing as a climate change tool for the first time ever. Because after all, it's a situation of a classic market failure, where the cost of pollution is borne by all, with all of the extreme weather events and the triple crisis, climate, biodiversity, and pollution that we are facing, but the profits accrue to the polluters. So there's very likely going to be a massive diplomatic push prior to COP26 for all countries, all signatories to Paris, to step up their climate ambition. How does this affect Malaysia, especially the private sector? I want to give 3 examples of the multiple tsunamis that are facing us. Number one, we have trading partners who have committed to climate ambition, and they don't want to be accused of outsourcing their carbon footprint to countries that don't have stated climate targets. So there's a very real likelihood of Malaysian businesses, which play a very large part, a very significant contributor in the global supply chain, there's a very real likelihood of them being removed from the global supply chain if it appears that we are lagging in climate ambition or adaptation efforts. And the vast majority of multinationals have already indicated they have a zero tolerance approach. They will be removing suppliers that don't meet expectations. So there is clearly an expiry date for carbon reliant businesses, and it is fast approaching. And Malaysia is a trading nation. Our exports are 70% of our GDP. The second example I wanted to share is that before the tsunamis of climate adverse events are affecting us, allocators of capital and the capital markets, which are forward looking, are going to pull this risk forward. There's a real risk of our sovereign credit rating being affected. And if we are not pricing in the cost of pollutants or environmental destruction, which critically impairs our ability to be resilient, are we also misstating earnings of our corporations? The third example is carbon pricing instruments. There are already 64 such instruments now in operation around the world, and this is a trend that is likely to continue. So if there is a pollutant which is creating an existential risk beyond the borders, beyond the factory walls, we need to price it. For example, the social cost of carbon. And there's a high likelihood of stranded assets when this inevitable carbon pricing is implemented, whether by us as a country or whether this tax income is going to be retained by our trading partners through the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which they are already proposing. So it's a very difficult balance, having to seek stability while we're trying to retain nimbleness and agility. Resource security, water, energy, food, is a central problem, and we need to consider this carefully. But the timing is very critical. There have been 5 Ipcc assessments done, and in this previous 5 assessments, the range of warming for scenarios was between 1.5 degrees of warming and 4.5 degrees of warming. But in the forthcoming Ipcc 6 assessment, for the first time, it will show a compacted range between 2.3 degrees of warming all the way up to 4.5 degrees of warming. This means we no longer have a range based on the current NDCs that goes from a manageable 1.5 degrees to disastrous at over 4 degrees. Now the range is starting from very dangerous, which is above 2 degrees, which can lead to a hothouse Earth. And so, what is the direction of travel? We need bold action on the climate emergency. We need to align numbers if we want to align behaviors, and this does mean setting targets. Mainstreaming the climate conversation is about mobilizing action at all levels. Of course, there is a counter narrative of can we wait a little bit longer? Can science and technology come up with solutions? But we still need, there will always be gaps. We still need solutions today. And we are facing a long tail of increasingly obsolescent technologies, which are going to give rise to stranded assets when the inevitable carbon pricing is implemented. So private sector needs to increase its commitment, whether individuals to business entities, sectors of industries to country level. And the problems are deeply interconnected, not just the triple crisis, the resource security nexus of water, energy, food, meeting the SDGs. So we need a close integration of all of these efforts to manage these risks. If you agree this is an existential crisis, if you agree that this part of the world is disproportionately going to be affected, if you agree that we are lagging in adaptation efforts, and that we lack access to real-time granular data, which can lead to better informed decisions and better allocation of capital, if you agree that our products and goods are no longer going to be welcome in our largest trading partners who have declared their climate ambition, then carrying on in the existing trajectory is a race to the bottom. And I'm not sure if business and industries want to be part of this race. Over to you, Niloy. Thank you.
Lovely, Datin. Very sobering messages, and certainly, existential crisis is probably the way to describe it. I don't think we have all of us have yet internalized this. But anyway, I will keep us moving. Dato Mary, it's your turn now to tell us how this whole awareness is setting in the country, especially at the level of the governments that you deal with through PKT. And I understand from Dato Shizeni's opening that you will also touch upon the circular economy. So over to you, Dato. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Yes, today I'm going to speak on a smart environment for low carbon cities. This picture actually is a park right in the middle of a city somewhere in Malaysia. So I'll let you all guess where this place is. All right. At the end of the time, you just let me know. Okay, next. Okay, as we all know, rapid urbanization has happened all over the world, and Malaysia is not exempted. And where right now, at this present, we are about 77% urbanized, and these figures is going to grow, and we can see that majority of our people are going to live in the city. And of course, with rapid urbanization, there will be issues and challenges. All right, next. Now, there is an urgent need to tackle urban challenges and pain points. I call it pain points because if we don't do anything about it, we are going to be in trouble. So pollution, environmental degradation, traffic congestions, and inefficient deployment of urban services, threat of crime, deterioration of natural resources, poor housing, and things like that. So I believe that everybody is in the know that urbanization has caused a lot of issues. but yet it is still growing. It is always growing, and it will continue to grow as people flock to cities, for their livelihood and so on. So cities are also responsible for producing 70% of the global greenhouse gas emission. So therefore, we cannot run away from this problem. Okay, next. Now, what I'm going to speak on is on how the Malaysian Smart City Framework, which was launched on the 23rd of September 2019, how we can use actually ICT and technological advances to address urban issues. Now, what we really need to do actually is to look into, now, smart city is a global phenomenon now, and we saw the importance of smart city, use of technology is even more real today during the pandemic. As we didn't expect that online business is going to be the thing, but today it is online meeting, is online business, and so on. So we cannot run away from having smart initiatives in our cities. So basically, is to promote quality of life, economic growth, safe environment, and best urban practices. Now, we have 7 smart city components. But I'm going to concentrate on smart environment because today we're talking about low carbon city. Let's go on to next. All right, if we talk about what are the challenges as far as the smart environment is concerned, that we have a lot of loss of green spaces. We know that as the cities are growing with more developments and so on, we realize that there are less green space around, and improper solid waste management, air pollution, water pollution, floods, landslides, and so on. Even high rate of non-revenue water, high usage of non-renewable energy, and high carbon footprint. So there are strategies which I'm going to go into those relevant ones. I'm not going to go through all, but I'm going to choose the relevant one. Okay, next. All right, preserve green space is something that we feel that through the SMART initiative, we can do something about it. All right, we can use RFID as a smart application, and this will actually ease the local authority in operational activities. They can track the stages of plant growth, losses, and so on. And most countries are doing this right now because they want to make sure that actually tree planting can be digitally planned, and you can actually have your preferred choice of tree or the type of tree that is that's able to absorb, the CO2. So the other thing that the benefits of this will be, we want to stop the shrinking of tree cover. If you look at some countries, I'm very fortunate that Malaysia, we have this kind of avenue that, trees are still on our roads, but there are some places you hardly see any trees. And that's where the urban heat island effect comes in. And then you have more pavement, more buildings, more concrete spaces, and that is absorbing and retaining heat. This is what we want to avoid. So definitely, we hope that through this preserving this green space and trees, we are able to absorb carbon emission and energy costs. And this is something very important, even at this time, is the natural stress relief. It encourages social and physical activities and soothe mental illness. Not so much of social, but at least it will help during this pandemic. And for Penang, I just give a few examples. Penang Green Connectors Project. This is where they started tree planting to reduce temperature in the urban areas. And Iskandar have started the public-private collaboration on green economy. And Cyberjaya has this improved greenery management. And we at KBKT have actually came up with this urban community farming policy. Of course, Singapore has done very well. They have 9 out of 10 of their homes are within 10 minutes walk to the nearest park, and so on. So Italy has got the tags FID on their trees, and so they have improved. They have urban forests in the city. Next. Okay, this is another one, sustainable solid management. Now, waste separation and reduction at source is something that we can do. But unfortunately, Malaysia is not doing too well in this area. But we hope that through digitalization, which we are now in the process of coming out with a smart bin, we are working together with MOSTI right now. So we are using ICT, to manage our waste. And smart bins, digital tracking, we actually have the C4I monitoring in our SW Corp. And implementing waste to energy is also one area. This is something I want to share with you all, the waste recycling by communities through reward programs. This has been very successful in Malaysia. Probably it's not known to the world outside yet because it's very inclusive. I mean, it is to the PPR, the B40 group, people. You see, what happened is they actually started separation at source, and that's where communities are coming up with separation at source, and they are doing the recycling, and communities are helping themselves. They are being empowered to do this, and this is something very interesting. Okay. Oh dear. All right. So I'll just go on quickly, and then of course transform waste recycling to technology and so on. Okay. Next. The other thing is improving air quality. So again, here we are talking about IoT technology and electrochemical sensors. You know, we can install air quality monitoring system, use of electric vehicles and charging stations and so on. So this is something which we hope that we can have a free car day. And then, of course, with this, with less use of private vehicles and more of public transports and so on. So definitely, this will help to lessen congestion on the road and improve health and active lifestyle. Okay, we have Malacca, Cyberjaya in Kuala Lumpur doing this. Next. Now, using building energy automation system for energy consumption tracking, also solar panel, rainwater harvesting, using of smart meters, energy saving lightings like LED lightings and so on. And of course, we have the implementation of smart grid system in Malacca. And of course, all this will enhance energy efficiency and reliability. So saving electricity consumption and maintenance costs in the long run is important, and also enhance renewable energy capacity. Right, next. Okay, it's my last slide. Low carbon city concept. I believe that to promote and enhance low carbon city, it should be done at every level, and to reduce the CO2 emission in all human activities in cities. And of course, every development right now will have to base on the low carbon concept to assist in mitigating climate change and protecting the environment. So for a cleaner and healthier city for all Malaysians, and it is not the responsibility of the local authorities alone or even KPKP or the ministries, but it is all of us for our future generations. So we want to see our cities being green and sustainable in the long run. All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dato' Mary. Much going on in Malaysia. Clearly, our challenge is to learn from these centers of excellence and broad base it further and socialize it across the country more uniformly. Thank you for giving us an insight into that. So very quickly over to Tan Sri Jamila then, who, as I said in the beginning, colleagues, is sitting at this incredible cusp of choices and trade-offs, and finding all the vulnerabilities and inequalities that have come to the fore that with the crisis, the COVID crisis, and how does one balance public safety with the need for jobs and the need to go out and interact? I mean, difficult moral choices every day that countries leading with such capability, such deep heart, but also tremendous intellectual energy. So, Tan Sri, over to you. We'll be delighted to hear your overview from where you sit.
Thank you so much, Niloy. Assalamualaikum, and to be with this esteemed panel. I was going to ask Dato' Mary, where was that park? But she may have signed off already. When I was asked to speak, I was to talk about how do you look at cities and humanitarian crisis and climate change. So let me talk a little bit about that and interject on the COVID crisis as well, which is really the biggest crisis we're facing today. So if you look at the humanitarian response that's required, and the traditional way that we respond to crisis, it's fundamentally at odds with the way that towns and cities are organized. And I will say this very simply put, that the international humanitarian system, which is sometimes copied at national level, is one that is structured against situations where people who are either affected by crisis are localized to one place, or maybe within a certain area, but with no capacities or minimal capacities there, particularly say after an earthquake and so on and so forth. But we've seen, particularly with the COVID crisis, and as urbanization is so rapidly happening around the world, that this fundamental design is now completely flawed. If we look at, how do we then think about new ways of approaching how we manage these crises, including the pandemic crisis? So what have we learned? We've learned that emissions from the pandemic, as a result of us having lockdowns and so forth from pandemics, is reduced. We've also learned that the virus is airborne, and therefore aerosol transmission becomes such an important component of how we look at managing crisis. Yet, cities, town halls, developers and so forth have been unable to think about, design from that perspective. So we're struggling now to figure out how do you now balance, indoor air quality, how do you balance reducing indoor transmissions and so forth. The other thing that we've learned is that, communication networks are critical. The shift to digital, both at business operations, social interactions, social media is more focused, much more data, hunger for data. And I really want to reiterate what was said by Datin Sunita as well, that it's this need for granular data which will help us get out of the crisis. The third is that working from home becomes a norm, which actually reduces again our CO2 transmissions. It has its pros and cons in terms of work-life balance, but it also requires us to relook at our internet infrastructure and how do you then look at job generation, economic development, and that will really again highlight the rural and urban divide. Those who are not having access to that, either for education, work, will actually become more amplified. And then on the health side, many of you may know that I'm a huge proponent of planetary health, and that is about the fact that you cannot have human health without protecting planetary health. And a lot of the health crises that we're going to face today and tomorrow in reference to pandemics is already on a trajectory that it's very hard for us to stop. It's really a fast-moving train. And it's a result of environmental degradation. It's a result of us crossing and violating our planetary boundaries that has allowed zoonosis, or rather disease transmission from animals, to be set free. So how would a low-carbon, climate-resilient recovery from COVID look like? What could be some of the main building blocks? I keep saying to people, don't use the word new normal, because it's not going to be new. It's going to be the next normal to the next normal to the next normal. But let's agree the previous normal was not good. And that next normal shifting continually will require us to continually have the ability to adapt and to have mindsets that will actually drive behavior change. The first thing we need to look at is partnership. Is going to be so key. Managing crisis at urban city, urban city level, you really need private-public partnership. You need community participation. We've seen how the Kita Jaga Kita movement has really spurred the assistance of people in trouble as a result of young people getting together and driving this. And then we need, this is going to be critical. And this finding that balance is often very, very difficult. And it's not just a problem in Malaysia, it's around the world. So, but can we look at green stimulus measures for this? I'm actually speaking on two panels today, so I'm going from one to another, and the other one is actually with Alam, a new foundation being set up, and we've heard really fantastic messages from Ministry of Finance around reviving the economy with green stimulus packages. The other one, of course, is mobility. I think that the design of cities is going to be crucial. If we don't design cities thinking about how people can be then having a much more local economy. And we don't have to look far. Look south to Singapore. It has HDB flats, and then beneath the HDB flats, there's banks, there's grocery stores, there's gyms, there's GP clinics. So you create the ecosystems that doesn't then require you to take the car or to use transport to get to your daily activities. And that innovation that on process and on paradigms is so critical, and not just relying on gadgets and such innovations. The other thing, of course, is to really mainstream climate and disaster risk reduction into national development planning, which means that you need to have a national disaster risk reduction plan that is as local as, and therefore collaborative city planning is going to be very, very key. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about is how do you then change the mindsets? And I think that requires us to look at who are the drivers of changing mindset. I think we need to include faith leaders, we need to include groups, we need to include business associations. So it's a completely different paradigm on managing that. Now, when I, with my 20 over years experience in managing crisis, it's been quite tough. You work at the UN, but the face of humanitarian management is going to be very, very local. It's going to be very much driven by people helping other people, governments playing a very important role in actually incorporating humanitarian response to social protection measures. And we have to start, and we have to inspire. And I want to appreciate and recognize Dato' Sri Zaini, who's on this call, because it was a conversation between me and him saying, how do I make the vaccination program more green, right? And then, CASA took the lead and designed, a green strategy for our vaccination program so that we become carbon neutral at the end of achieving the vaccination program. I believe Malaysia is the only country that's embarked on it. So it's about putting ideas together and making it happen. We all need to be inspired. And I think this, in an environment of despair right now, is what we need to do. We need to rise, we need to lift ourselves up, we need to look to the future, and we need to think of all the possibilities that are possible. I'm going to leave with my favorite slide here. We always talk about COVID, and we're only looking at COVID, and we don't realize behind us there's a recession, there's a climate change, and behind that biodiversity loss. All this is happening at the same time. Malaysia is getting hotter, Malaysia is having more extreme weather events. My friends in the US are calling me and telling me that seafood, or rather crustaceans, are now rising on the ocean floors, cooked, which means that the water is just so hot. I think we have a climate crisis, which is even larger than pandemics that are looming ahead. And we are like the frogs in the slowly boiling water. So we need to get out of it. We need to think of this together. And the key is partnership. I think this is what we need to do, and the mindset change. So I'm going to end here because I always abide by time. I look for questions in the Q&A. Thank you very much, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Dhanasri, and thank you for connecting the two crises and bringing us to where what lessons we can take from this one to meet the next one, the bigger tsunami wave that's coming behind in your illustration over there. So, dear audience, we will now open it up for questions. I see there's questions streaming in the chat box, and my colleagues will help me sort of go through them and make sense of them. So. And prioritize them. So let me kick off with the question from Ming Chuen Chai, which is and dear panelists, just feel free to take any of this that you feel is in your wheelhouse. So the first question from Ming Chuen is, where are we now in terms of GHG emissions compared to 2005? And in light of the understanding that it is to reduce it by 45% by 2030. So I suppose Dato' Sri Zaini, that's for you.
Yeah. Okay. 45% in the context of carbon intensity intensity. So there are 3 ways to report GHG emission. One is what I mentioned, carbon intensity. So countries like Singapore, Malaysia, China, and few others, Korea is reporting on actual quantum, 24%. And Indonesia, Thailand, and many other countries, they are reporting based on business as usual reduction. So they just focus on business as usual and what is the reduction. So we have chosen carbon intensity. So that is against our GDP. I would say that at the moment we are on track, despite the carbon emission is increased day by day. The slide that I mentioned earlier, that is something that we have to, the slide based on BUR3 means that we are reporting for 2016 greenhouse gases emission. After 2016, there's a lot of initiative we have started. So, for example, we are talking about carbon, energy efficiency, renewable energies, all after 2016. So that's very important for us to understand. Based on our meeting yesterday, together with other ministers, I'm very, I'm not saying that we are very happy, but we are saying that we are on track. We need to do more. So we emphasize that we have to do more, because if we keep what we are doing now, we will be able to get more than 45%. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Dato' Sri. Let me keep you on screen for one more second, because there's another question which is gaining a lot of traction among our participants, which is, if you can give us an overview of the clear policies on carbon emissions and reductions, and then what is going on to targetize and indicatorize them, so that there are measures and there are accountabilities. If we don't stick to those targets and
yeah.
So if you don't mind giving us a quick flavor of that, and then we'll move on.
Yeah. Okay. The easiest way to know is to read BUR Biennial Update Report 3. You just go to your Google's BUR 3 Malaysia. So you get a set of reports. It's about 200 pages of reports on how we overcome or how we handle it. How we address the issues, what is the mitigation measures, what is the adaptation measures. It's all there defined in our report. So as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the issue is not how we do it. The issue is whether we want to do better and we can benefit more. So this is something that we would like to address. Prime Minister this morning mentioned while launching the master plan, National Low Carbon Cities Master Plan, mentioned about the availability and potential of 16.6 trillion USD on cities-related carbon emission. It's only on carbon emission related to cities. This is not only for Malaysia, but also throughout the world. So if you are late, you are not going to able to improve yourself. At the same time, you miss the opportunity to capture the economic or financial benefits out of it.
Thank you, Dato' Sri. I think we'll need to come back to you in just a bit. I'm looking at the list of questions, but to the panel, there's and I will leave this to whoever feels they want to jump in. This is a question about private vehicles and the fact that they are a big source of. I mean, transportation in general is about 16 or 17% of greenhouse gas emissions. They're not the top. They're actually number 4. I've been doing.
No. That's not. Okay, energy contributes about 80%. Energy sector contribute about 80% of the carbon emission. Out of 80%, 20% is from power generation. Yeah. And about 27% from transportation. The rest are from industries. Say, for example, some industries, they generate a lot of oil and gas industries and a few other industries that are co-generating their own energy. That's in case of Malaysia, yeah?
So the question is, but insofar as private vehicles do, and if I'm remembering the statistics right, I think 8% of greenhouse gas emissions is road transport. The other 8% being airline and shipping. Can you say a little more? Datanshri Sunita, also please feel free to jump in about what, with this whole culture of cheap cars, easy credit to buy cars, etc., and fossil fuels being as cheap as they are in Malaysia, probably among the cheapest in the world, as you know. So, where are we going to make middle ground here? And what should we be doing? What are the incentives and disincentives, if you like, carrots and sticks? Doesn't she want to jump in?
Yes. So we are Climate Governance Malaysia and the CEO Action Network is organizing for a series of roundtable conversations between key ministries and private sector as well. We're very grateful for the support of the Ministry of Environment, CASA, for this, and they hosted the kickoff of this series of roundtables on the 12th of April. CEO Action Network is also chaired by the President, Group CEO of Petronas. So we do believe that we've made a very good start to an all-of-government, whole-of-society type of engagement. In the energy sector roundtable series, and there are 5 of them, one roundtable is going to be on low-carbon mobility. So the majority of our greenhouse gas emissions in this country for transport sector is actually road transport. So how do we electrify this? How do we make this more efficient? How do we have a public infrastructure that supports this pivot to greening public transport, for example? And a small proportion is marine and aviation. So these are the sort of conversations that we're going to be having with the key ministries to try and see how we can get us as close to greening the economy in this specific sector as possible. But you are right, Niloy. I think in the race to promote electric vehicles and to mandate that we cannot use ICE any longer, I think we need to be very mindful about our purchasing choices, because the rare earth materials that are going to be needed are multiples of what is currently being used at present. So that's even more destruction to the environment, and they are looking at deep sea mining as a source of these rare earth minerals, when we don't really have extraterritorial jurisdiction agreements in relation to this.
No, perfectly. Very good point. I think copper and lithium prices are historically at their highest now, and partly driven by the demand for battery technology and in electric and solar. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we have to think that we can't solve one problem only to create another bigger one. Shri Jamil, a question for you. I'm just trying to. It's from Sharifa Shahida Syed Ahmed, and she asks, you mentioned about green carbon neutral Malaysia vaccination program. I see. Okay. How can you speak a bit more to it? What is being done, so that we can spread the word as well. Tom, the Malaysian drum a little bit.
Yeah, I think Dr. Zainish is smiling widely there because his ministry drew up the strategy and the policy together with us. So basically, number one is about educating our volunteers at the vaccination centers and so forth to not use disposables like plastics and so forth, and move towards more sustainable material. The second is calculating the transportation of the vaccines, the use of plastic disposables and other things, and then offsetting the CO2 as a result. So really trying to neutralize the carbon footprint. Dr. Srizani, do you want to? You are the technical person.
So we calculated we require about 24 million trees to be planted.
Yeah.
By these vaccination programs. So Niloy, I think we have to, my slides earlier, I was very fast at that time. If you cannot reduce, you offset.
Yeah.
So people say that, oh, I can make mistake and then I can offset. I'm not saying that. You try to not making mistake, but at the same time, if you can't do anything else, you offset. Say, for example, I keep on telling people, whenever I travel 350 kilometers by road, I have to plant a tree. So this is not only me, but people in the ministry. So we will calculate this month, because this 6 months already, the amount, the mileage that we have gone through this year, and we offset with tree. Yeah, so the same principle that we are trying to do.
Yeah, with the vaccines as well, one of the things we did is to also speak to the manufacturers to say if you can put the vaccine doses, more doses in one vial rather than single-use vials. So they've been able to do that, you know, for example, with Pfizer now you can get 6 doses in a vial. Sinovac used to be single dose, now it's 2 doses in a vial. AstraZeneca, you get 10 doses in a vial. So the less material, you know, that you have to throw away is going to be very important. But it's also an educational process. It's also about telling our people to make sure that, you know, separation bins, separator bins, you know, that what's perishable, non-perishable, what's organic, what's non-organic.
Yeah, exactly. Socialization is so important, and I'm delighted to see that the two of you are co-conspiring on this. You know, so much of the whole of government is lip service, and it's delightful to see that it's actually really happening in an important area like this on how to green the whole vaccine chain. I have a couple of questions which I'll bundle together for Dato Mary, because and these are actually more from the housing side of your ministry. One is about, sorry, I'm losing. Yeah, about looking at green architecture and you know, the whole housing agenda within the Green Cities program, which is, as you know, a multidimensional program. Green walls, vertical forests, obviously a reference to our southern neighbor Singapore, and building codes. What sort of building codes are being instituted? So, Dato Mary, if you can give us a very quick flavor of that.
All right. Thank you, Banerjee. Actually, as far as the Ministry of Housing and Local Government is concerned, we actually encourage green building. And even in our OSC, we actually promote green building, as well as right now we came up with our own policy, which is the community farming. And in this community farming, we have a guideline as to how you can actually green your whole building vertically or horizontally or at the ground level, whichever level is possible, so that the community per se can actually dive into planting and you know, urban farming. So this is something which we encourage, and we are actually going into the green building concept, whereby most of our our buildings right now, we want to follow the green building criteria. Like I say, here again, most of our projects are basically they are high rise, so we follow a certain conventional design, but we are looking forward to having this kind of a new design where the green criteria comes in. And as a matter of fact, we are in the process of looking into solar, using solar into our lighting in our PPR homes, especially in the car park area and common areas in the building, so that we can save electricity as well as, you know, save the cost of energy. Yeah.
Dato Mary, since I have you on screen, let me quickly also, why don't you speak a bit to the waste issue? Another thing in the another big parameter in the green cities discussion, no? About how do we manage and what are we doing? How are we thinking ahead in Malaysia and the never normal? I learned so many beautiful terms today. The never normal and the next normal to the next normal. I will be shamelessly copywriting these and throwing it around.
Yeah.
That's Sri and Tanshri.
I definitely agree with you. It's going to be the next normal now. Yes, we have been traditionally dumping our waste, from whether it's domestic or commercial or whatnot into our landfill. Now we are going to move away from that into a circular economy, and now circular economy is not new to the world, but it's something that we have already began with some of the industry doing EPR and things, stuff like that. We have only 30% as far as the recycling rate in the country is concerned, but we are moving towards 40% in the next 5 years. So we have to work very hard to actually transform the way waste is being managed right now. We really want to reduce them to our landfill so that, of course, there is a balance here. Do you want to burn them in an incinerator or you want to recycle them? So we need to have a fine balance whereby, okay, if we are going for reducing to landfill, then what are the alternatives available for us? So therefore, we have already spoken to some of our stakeholders and all that, and we see that there is a huge potential to actually produce product by using secondary material, by using waste material. So the problem right now is there's a gap between what is being collected and how does it transport into, how does it get into the industry. So we really need to look into that, and this is where KPKT is actually looking into coming out with the EPR guidelines, as well as the circular economy blueprint. And we hope that before end of this year, we should be able to come up with at least the waste eco park guidelines to actually lure more investors to come in to look into waste as a source of supply, of their materials that they can actually manufacture and produce products using waste. So this is something we are working together with MOSTI as well, and CASA. Definitely, we need to work together as a team here, because it's just not KPKT alone, but there's a lot of integrated kind of management, as well as cooperation between not just the government agencies, but the industry players, as well as even the communities themselves must know, the recyclers themselves. I see that there's a problem of connecting here. You see, why we are not doing so well, because from what I've gathered from the engagement with the stakeholders, they actually don't talk to each other. So this is where I think KPKT will play the role here to connect all the dots and to connect the people from collection right up to the manufacturer. So I guess this is where we need to play a bigger role here. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, indeed, the platforms for conversation of multiple stakeholders, and it's an imperfect science, isn't it?
Yes.
With different interest groups coming together on a platform, but at least as long as we talk, we can make some progress. That is, Sunita, speaking about platforms, where, there's the question from Jasmine, my former colleague, who's asking, how far do you take polluter pays? I mean, where is it an incentives issue, or is it a carrots issue, or a sticks issue? And what will it take for the private sector to move to decarbonize pathways? Of course, it's a very broad question. I mean, I was reading that cement manufacturing, the current technology around the world that we have is a deadly carbon producer. There is no way we can get out of it unless we completely think of alternatives to cement. And as you know, rapidly growing countries are consuming huge amounts of cement, and there you are. So, Latin, tell us, give us some blue sky thinking on how we can decarbonize, and what carrots and sticks can we bring into it for the private sector. I mean, I'm not vilifying them at all, but just how do we make them equal stakeholders?
Sure.
Yes.
So I think what is very clear is that amongst private sector participants, there are some that are thought leaders and there are some that are laggards. And the thought leaders who are acting on climate ambition clearly see this as a competitive advantage. And cities also need to understand that capital is going to flow to where returns can be generated. And this means it is going to flow away from polluting industries which have no strategy for transition, no capacity, and essentially no future. Johan Rockström has articulated a very clear and compelling arguments against an approach of and encouraging a willingness to pay a green premium for better products, because indirectly this creates a psychology of a trade-off. People feel that they have to choose between preservation of their wealth or protecting the planet. And it's very likely that this is an obsolete and incorrect way of communicating. So businesses have an opportunity of devising a sustainable route, which is not just more attractive, but easier. And this is when we know we have succeeded. When people are sustainable without knowing it, they're choosing the right because it's better, cheaper. Having said that, a fear element that is science-based is justified and important. In relation to direction of travel, I think we're very clear. Of course, it will always be useful to have a significantly stronger policy signaling from the government and the regulatory authorities. But I would like to conclude by saying something which a deputy prime minister of our neighboring country said at a conference yesterday. We cannot predict the future, but we can and must seek to create a better future. And I think that is our responsibility.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you, Datinshri. Sorry, Tanshri, did you want to come in?
Yes, I was going to say that I think we can predict the future. There's a lot of data now that can show us trends and what we might be able to expect, although maybe not in 100% accuracy, but I think I completely agree. It's not just about creating the better future, but it's also about putting measures in place now that will actually take us away from those risks. And it's all about risk management. I was very much taken aback by a film called 2040, where they looked at how can the 2040 using available technology today. So it's not about reinventing the wheel. I think we are all often so distracted about with anything shiny and new that we forget that there are traditional practices that need to be brought back to life. And this is what I was saying about better city planning. For Datuk Mary, you are with KPKT. It's so powerful if, for example, this whole concept of community urban farming, something that is policy that has lots of incentives that will actually not only improve our greening the environment and all that, but it's about nutrition. And we have real issues. So it's about connecting those dots, right? We know people living in the PPR flats and so forth have real issues with nutrition. The children are undernourished. They have a lot of micronutrient deficiency. So I think if we can encourage these little ripples that actually will create movements of change, and it can no longer be a top-down approach. It has got to be an approach to solving problems we have today.
Yes, definitely. We are really moving forward to that, and we hope that this whole community farming in the cities will actually expand, not just the PPR alone, but to all communities. In fact, we are going to launch this Dasar Kebun Community Bandar on the 3rd of August, and it's going to be very interesting because we are looking at using every available space to actually allow the city dwellers to actually make use of every available space, be it if there's a tanah lapang somewhere available, you can actually request that this place be used for farming, and the community can come together. It is just not just as a project, but it's a social communication, integration, as well as healthy lifestyle, and like what you mentioned rightly, it's all about having a healthier lifestyle too, the type of food that we eat, especially now. We need to make sure that our immune system is strong and so on. So I believe there's a lot of we can do, and definitely we welcome collaboration and cooperation from all, especially NGOs and so on. By the way, I just want to let you know, Tan Sri, Dr. Jamila, the place that I mentioned just now is actually Lake Gardens, Seremban.
Oh, okay. May I interject a bit?
Please come in, Dato Sri.
Yeah, I mean, these few days I received my fruits, durian and durian musang king and rambutan from my neighborhood. So we have trails within our neighborhood, and then we planted a lot herbs and etc. etc. But I think the durian musang king that we had last week was as good as musang king from Rau. So you don't have to go to Rau to get musang king.
That's fantastic. Excellencies, we are coming to the last 10 minutes of our session. So I want to kind of ask you to maybe reflect on some interesting things that you threw out tantalizingly and then left it at there. So maybe two things. For example, Dr. Zaini, why don't you speak to what you unpack the climate culture that you introduced, and then speak to, give us some sneak peek into what's coming from the ministry, what's coming overall at the level of Malaysia in terms of technology, new thinking, new policies. What can we look forward to? But first, the climate culture. Let's let our audience hear a little more about what you.
Whatever we do at planning stage, strategizing things are within the organizational domain. So it's very difficult for us to transfer that into the mind of the people and to get into personal domain where you can create new habits, new behavior, a new culture. So what we are doing in the ministry, you can see in this report as well, we are going to emphasize on the importance of understanding. There are 3 M's. One is be able to measure, manage, and mitigate. In order to measure, we have to get a lot of data, and this is what Dr. Mary mentioned. But the management is management of the people. We cannot manage lighting system. We are managing people to respect energy consumption, need to be at certain level and whatnot. So a lot of things that we are going to do in the future will include the importance of behavioral and habitual change. We don't want to spend money unnecessarily, billions, but at the same time we tell people, okay, we have very nice drainage system, but don't throw rubbish in the drainage system. Otherwise you can get flash floods, things like that. So with that, I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dato Sri. Indeed, so much of it is down to our individual behavior and how we socialize our children and what kind of responsibilities we instill in them. Dato Sri, carbon pricing, why aren't we getting it right? And what's keeping you awake at night?
I think carbon is going to be priced eventually, but it's going to take a while. You need to scope out the study, which are the sectors, which are the levers that we want to pull. It's not an easy initiative to implement taxes of any sort. But at this stage of awareness, one easy measure that we could consider is just mandating shadow pricing. So not really payment of a tax, but imputing the price of this tax. This has no impact on profits or cash flows. This clearly demarcates the leaders and the laggards. Shadow pricing can be mandated very quickly and will clearly demonstrate if corporate profits are misstated, and it will also act as a proxy to the quality of thinking in management and at board level. And something else that I really would like to see is, because there's so much capacity building urgently needed, to mandate climate education. Every subject in school, university, needs to be aware of the impacts that this existential risk is going to have. Swedish speaker 2 weeks ago at a climate governance webinar, and he put it very succinctly. No one is going to buy your goods. No one is going to invest in you or lend you money. No one will want to work for you. So it stands to reason also that if we consider this existential crisis, there's tremendous opportunity to increase value if you can contribute towards the solution. So everyone needs to participate in this conversation.
Wow, both the first two speakers have talked about socializing and social sensitizing, and wow, it's now quickly becoming a theme then to close out our session. And Dr. Mary, then what are we going to do with our citizens at large, but also city managers and local councils, and how do we bring them on board? How do we bring young people in cities on board? How do we and I can assure you UNDP is doing quite a bit there, but let's hear from you.
Yeah, I strongly agree with the earlier two comments. Basically, cities in our cities all over, it's not about buildings, it's not about traffic jams and waste management. It's not the hardware, it's the software. It's about relationships, it's about support, it's about ownership, a sense of belonging, caring for one another, especially in this crisis. And I think it is about taking charge, of the situation around us, and whether it is from the local authorities or from the government or from the communities. I think it is time to break every barrier and start working together. I believe this is what we need to do, empowering even the most vulnerables. It is not the hardware, it is the software. And we need to support one another at this hour.
Indeed, this is turning out to be a very powerful conclusion to the session. So Tan Sri Jamila, unpack for us your beautiful lyrical notion of no human health without planetary health, and tell me and bring your heart into it as well, because everybody has now spoken a hearts and minds thing rather than just a science and technology thing.
So let me start by sharing with you a conversation with a in Rompin. And I was trying to convince him about vaccination. And he said to me that had my forest or my jungle disturbed and to go to the river black and has no fish, and therefore I would have been able to eat well. I've been able to care my family, and the diseases that are coming up from the jungles are not going to people where you live. He described planetary health a very conversation. Now, when you look at pull back to nature and the planet, so whether it's health, whether it's climate, is whatever crisis facing today, it is about the planet, and this is why planetary health lens you apply, whether it's to health, to climate, to social issues, must have a planetary health lens. And I really applaud the speaker.
Did we lose Tan Sri, or have I lost Tan Sri?
No, I can't hear her either.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry we lost her. She is right in the middle of. Anyway, we have just about an hour, a minute and a half. I'm sorry, but I won't try to summarize. But I really heard some new thoughts today, new ideas, and I will certainly use that in our UNDP space. But I'm sure our audience here is taking away a lot as well in terms of new ideas. I mean, shadow pricing, why not? Yes, indeed. Never normal, and next normal to next normal, and and all the sort of policy and technology work that's going on at the end of the government. So, my dear panelists, I really thank you. I thank you for your leadership in this very important agenda. I thank you for all the ideas that you're bringing into the space. And for constantly trying to champion these, although I'm sure sometimes it's not easy in your own respective spaces with so many stakeholders involved. And to our audience, thank you very much. I'm sorry I didn't do justice to all the questions, but I hope you're taking away a good flavor from this first plenary session, and do stick around. We have a rich day's offerings coming up. So thank you one more time for this very, very insightful, intelligent, and compassionate and considerate conversation. I hope to connect back with each one of you in the days to come. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banerjee and honorable panelists, for an excellent and insightful session. May I request for you all to kindly stay with us a few more moments with your cameras turned on, panelists and Mr. Banerjee, so we may actually have a quick photo session with all the speakers still with us and the moderator, Mr. Banerjee, before proceeding. Thank you. Speakers, let's have a quick smile on 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Thank you. Could we have another one on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Right. Right, we're bringing Dachin Sunita in as well. So if we could please have one more last smile from all of you panelists and moderators. All right, 1, 2, 3. And we're done.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Devin.
you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banerjee and panelists. Attendees, may I request for us all, as to with before, now leave this current session, and once you're back at the timeline browser page, please click on key sharing session to join the next session with me. Since it's already after 12, you will be able to enter already. Kindly refresh your browser if you encounter any glitches. I'll see you in just a minute.